I think it's a great buying opportunity. I think that both Bob and Mark are telling you the same thing. I think they're saying that they're echoing that sentiment. Bob's whole thing was about how the fundamentals are still solid for healthcare, yet this is all sentiment driven. And that's absolutely true. I think that healthcare has always been a lightning rod for political criticism. But if you look at the underlying fundamentals, they're probably some of the best in the S&P. They're one of the few sectors in the S&P that has very good estimate revision trends, sales revision trends, positive sales growth, positive earnings growth. I mean, that's a rare phenomenon to see this quarter. And if you look historically, when you at the multi-year periods of outperformance and underperformance, the number one driver of the underperformance periods, the longer secular underperformance periods, are really a function of profit cycles accelerating. So if you look at the 90s, because the reason I looked at the 90s was because everybody was talking about healthcare reform, the Clinton healthcare reform proposals. If you look at the 90s, though, the two periods of underperformance were in the early 90s and 1999. Those periods had nothing to do with healthcare reform. I mean, they were a small component of it, but the big component was that we had two profits recessions and you had huge rebounds in profits coming out of it. That's not a good environment for healthcare. But is that the environment we're in today? No, healthcare profits today are decelerating, and that's a great time to be in healthcare, which is actually the longest, best performing sector of all time, and has cheap on every single valuation metric out there, which you can't say for any other sector out there.
I would just say simply, if you think about healthcare as having been defensive during periods where people were questioning the EPS exposure of the overall market, this is that time. Think of the move down in things like United Healthcare, and although it snapped back, that's a name actually I still would be buying on this weakness.
Well, I just mentioned one thing about the XLV because I know that Mark was charting it a little bit. I mean, it's had 10% drops in the last year, so it doesn't feel particularly defensive when you consider, I mean, that's one more than the overall market has right here. Given that defensive nature, I don't know. I mean, it seems to me that it's forming a bit of a wedge here, and there does seem to be political risk here.